What do you make of calls to renationalise the energy sector? People are calling for it.
Well, they've been calling for it for some time. I mean, if we look at it from the historic perspective, this is a Corbyn-era policy, which, when it was announced before the 2019 election, was looked into by a lot of the think tanks, and they worked out that all of the renationalisations went through. Well, firstly, they were only calling for the nationalisation of the national grid at that point, and that was about £167 billion. And if they'd done all of the other nationalisations of all the different bits of the energy sector, that would have been up to £300 billion. So that's not really a very serious proposition when you're looking at a national debt that's over £1 trillion. So at the moment, any retreat from nationalisation is a very good idea for the Labour Party being taken more seriously.
You say that, so are you saying that actually renationalising will be too expensive and is not a realistic proposition?
Well, somebody owns these assets. I mean, the only way you can make it cheaply is if you effectively steal them. And some people suggest that might be a good idea. But if you do that, you'll destroy any confidence people have in investment in anything in the UK. And the one thing that we know is important for the low-carbon transition is that people want to invest in new forms of energy. And they also need to keep investing in things like gas, because we've seen the consequences of not doing that and a decade of missed opportunities this week.
Yeah, but as you said, you mentioned that people would have to steal the things off them, but actually some of these energy companies are going bust, as it were. So would that not be a way of sort of looking into it? I mean, we did it for the banks. We bought out RBS. Well, we took a large share of that, and then obviously I think we gave it back to them. But would this not be a way of actually capitalising on a situation where some of those energy companies appear to be going bust?
Well, it's confusing two different things. So the companies that are currently going bust are quite small retail energy companies who are principally responsible for reselling other people's energy that's been generated in coal-fired plants, less so these days, gas-fired, wind turbines and that kind of thing. Now, it's the core of the energy industry is where it's generated. What most people think of as the energy industry are those retail companies who are just the icing on the cake. And frankly, it's not really a serious problem if you've got a number of companies who've gambled money to offer a service, and people have then retreated when the prices have gone up. So that's a problem that's quite nice to have. You don't want to be in a position where you've got companies that never go bust, because then you're effectively nationalising all of the risk. And that's a big problem with some of the aspects of nationalisation. You're effectively making all energy industries inefficient and sluggish, and then you'll see people starting to put money, as it was under the Central Electricity Generating Board, into salaries and feathering their own nests. So nationalisation is no solution at all if you're worried about people putting money in the wrong place.
Interesting you say that. So that's not really a realistic proposition, although a lot of people would rather that we owned those things, because obviously if we then go into war with certain countries that own our energy supply, say, for example, China or anything like that, then we are in a very vulnerable position. If that's not an option, then what do you think we should be doing then with these industries like energy, for example?
Well, we've had for a very brief period a liberalised energy market, and that went all the way up until the Climate Change Act in around 2008-9. And what's happened since is that the government has found itself dragged into ratchet nationalisation. So although it's the case that the government doesn't own large parts of energy industries, it effectively does, because it's subsidising and underwriting them. So you have the situation that if you're a landowner, you can get an enormous amount of money from the government by hosting a wind farm. Now, that's lovely for you, but that's effectively a redistribution of wealth from everybody else to a small number of people who already own assets. So this, for the Labour Party, is the absolute opposite of their core ideology of fairer society.